Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Um, Judy, can you just change the settings so we can allow people to share cameras and unmute themselves?
Yep. Mm.
And if you are already here, we can see one or two people have joined already. Start by just dropping in the chat where in the world you're from, and also when you look outside the window, what is the weather doing today? An opportunity to get to know where everybody's dialing in from, and we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Hi everyone, welcome, welcome. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes. So whilst we're waiting, if you just want to drop into the chat where in the world you are, and if you look outside the window, what is the weather doing? Just so we can get a sense of where everybody is. Sabrina, I'm jealous. We've got torrential downpours outside. It's been raining non-stop for 2 days. There's actually a stream flowing past my front door, which isn't supposed to be there. Yeah, Joanna, I feel your pain. We have the same weather as you. We'll give it a couple more minutes. We did have almost 100 people signed up, so I'm assuming that they'll be dialing in just on time. So give it a few more minutes. So welcome, welcome everybody. Couple more minutes, giving time for everybody else to join, and we will get started. Just a couple more minutes and we'll get the session started. But just in case you haven't seen the message in the chat, if you haven't already done so, have a look outside the window and let us know what the weather's doing and where in the world you are. We normally do get a good spread of people from all around the world, so it's always great for us to know where you're dialing in from. Give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Wonderful. Give it another 30 seconds. People are still dropping in. It's lovely to see so many of my colleagues have joined today, either directly in front of the camera or lurking in the background like Emma. Firstly, thank you all so much for investing your most valuable resource in being here today, which is your time. It's the only resource that you cannot replace once it's gone. And particularly at this time of year, I'm sure many of you may well be feeling the pressure. There's so much to do. It feels like the list is never ending. Plus, we've got the added challenge and demands of kind of everything associated with the festive season, as well as knowing that in a couple of weeks that we may be, shutting down for Christmas, and it feels like you've got to get everything done before that happens. So I appreciate that actually this hour that we have in front of us may be something that you've considered, like, do I have the time or the capacity for this? We normally have several hundred people, up to 1,000 people that sign up for these sessions every month. This one we had decidedly a much smaller number of people that sign up, and as it stands, we've got like 20 of us here. It's a lot less than what we normally have. I totally appreciate that. So firstly, thank you so much for doing the hard thing, which is getting yourself here. And let me start with a question. How many of you have struggled with loneliness during the festive period, or noticed friends, family, or colleagues feeling lonely around this time? Okay. I can see several hands going up. Most of them my colleagues, but it seems to be the only ones with their cameras on. We'll come to that in a second. How many of you felt or noticed loneliness in others? Or sorry, how many of you never noticed or felt loneliness around this time of year? And if that's the case, that's okay too. Wonderful. Thank you. So this session is being recorded. The primary reason, most of the people that sign up for these sessions find that the time comes around and they're too busy or life gets in the way. So we will be sharing this recording only to those that are registered for this event that weren't able to make it in person. If there is anything of a sensitive or personal nature that gets shared in this session that isn't appropriate to share in the recording, we will edit that out before sharing the recording. But just wanted to make you aware that the session is recorded. For those of you who don't know us, how many of you are attending one of our sessions for the very first time? Okay, great, fantastic. For those first timers, you are very welcome. We are not a new organization. We've been around for 22 years and 2 weeks. We've just literally 2 weeks ago celebrated our 22nd anniversary. We came into existence in 2003 to essentially help to create a happier, healthier, more resilient world. And I personally created this organization off the back of a first-hand experience, which led to me having a breakdown and the depths of which I got to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And I actually took action against that. But thankfully, I failed and I survived that experience. And it was through the recovery of that experience I recognized that what I really wanted to do with my life is to help other people that found themselves in a similar situation. Sadly, things have got much worse since 2003, not better. You've got to bear in mind 2003 was pre-iPhone, pre-smartphone, pre-social media, and it feels like the challenge and demands of the world have only increased. And that's very relevant to the discussion we're having here today. I'm a born and bred Londoner. I'm not proud of the fact that last year London won an award. It won the award of being the loneliest city on the planet. Kid you not, you can look that up, which is astonishing given the fact that there are 9 million of us here in London. How is it that we're the loneliest city on the planet? And part of the concern here is that you can be surrounded by thousands of people and feel completely disconnected and isolated. But also, you could be completely by yourself with no other humans around and feel a sense of connection to everything and everyone. So we're here to really explore the importance of connection for us as human beings, particularly at this time of year, where if there are things in your life that haven't been resolved, there's emotions that haven't been expressed, there is loss or grief that you're holding, it can be really exaggerated at this time of year. And this is really why it's important for us to have this discussion, whether it's something that directly affects you or you may come into contact with people that are having this experience, given that we know that this is a huge societal issue, to the point where, for those of you in Britain, we actually have a government minister for loneliness. I kid you not. Again, I encourage you to look that up because it is such a big challenge. So part of this is not waiting for people in positions of authority to fix this, but for us to all take responsibility to be able to create connection, particularly at a time of year where life often doesn't look like it does in a Disney movie for most of us. So how can we create a sense of being able to bring alive the true spirit of the festive season? So this session is run from our charitable arm called the Stress Management Society. We have no external funding for the work that we do. We fund this from generous donations of people such as yourselves. If you feel that you're able to help or support us in any way, shape, or form, please do donate. Anything that you're able to provide helps us to continue doing this, providing the resources and the sessions that support so many people. This is not a lecture. It's not a webinar. This is actually a workshop. So what does that mean? I want us to have a human-to-human conversation. So please do put your cameras on so you're talking to real people rather than initials on a screen, because I'm seeing a lot of initials on the screen. And you know, the irony is the session is talking about connection. It's very hard to connect to initials on a screen. So let's have a human-to-human conversation. This is something that we're finding is disappearing in our daily professional lives. We're on Teams, Zoom calls, and conversations with people where you don't know the person, you have no direct relationship with them. We've got an opportunity to get to know each other just for the hour and build a sense of community, because that's something that is so lacking in modern society. I will ask questions. This is not my session. They are not rhetorical questions. They are actual questions. We're really lucky. We've got a small group. Obviously, it's lovely when we've got hundreds of people, but the fact there's 22 of us means that we can actually have a conversation. So if I ask a question, just unmute yourself and jump on the mic. If you are putting questions or comments into the chat, my lovely co-pilot for today, Judy, give us a wave, Judy. She's here supporting the session, so any of your comments and questions in the chat, she'll do her best to support and bring them into the main discussion. And I do also see several of my other colleagues that have joined as well, so they are, I'm sure, will be here to support you in any way that you need. So ask your questions, share your experiences, disagree, seek clarification, tell me to slow down. I'm from London, I get excited, sometimes I speak quickly. Whatever you need over the next 52 minutes, I'm here to serve and support you to the best of my ability. And let's have an open, real, and authentic conversation to consider how can we bring the true spirit of the festive season to people that may be feeling disconnected and isolated at this time of year. So, a couple of ground rules. Just we've got a small amount of time. Let's make the most of it. Do your best to be present. This is not the kind of session where you can watch it in the background whilst working on the report on another screen. So if you can limit other direct distractions, screens or devices that like to buzz, ring, bleep, or vibrate, if you can put them off, great, or at least put them on silent. Given the nature of the conversation, we may go into the depths of mental health or suicidality. I'm just putting in a trigger warning in case it comes up and we are talking about people that are really struggling. So just being aware that the very nature of the conversation we are having, there may well be things that potentially could be upsetting or triggering. Participation, what you put in will determine what you get out of this session. If you say nothing, do nothing, don't get involved, you're not going to get anywhere near as much value as if you participate in the conversation. Be open, honest, respectful. If someone shares something you don't like or don't agree with, that's absolutely okay. They're entitled to their perspective as you're entitled to yours. Excuse me. Excuse me. Have an open mind and an open heart. New ideas, new perspectives, new ways of doing things. It's not just what you can learn from us. In fact, it's what we can learn from each other. How can we learn and grow together as a community? Use I statements. If you are making a statement, speak on behalf of yourself. In my opinion, I think that rather than speaking on behalf of others. We do ask for confidentiality in the sense that if someone shares something of a personal nature, that doesn't get shared outside of this session without their express permission. That includes those of you who are watching this as a recording. If you are hearing a story that's shared in this session, please don't share that outside of this safe space, and that governs even those that are watching this as a catch-up. The only caveats to confidentiality are anything that I share or anything myself and my colleagues share, you have our permission to share that with anyone that's willing to listen. And the second caveat to confidentiality is if anything is mentioned in this session that affects your safety or the safety of others, that is, again, the only time that we will break confidentiality. Let me know if there's anything you want to add to this, anything you want to change. And yeah, as I said, like we can revisit this as we go through the conversation. So let's kind of look behind the tree and the decorations and the carols, and let's look at kind of the reality of Christmas for many. 1 in 9 people will spend Christmas alone. I've only ever spent one Christmas by myself. It was during COVID, where for those in the UK, you may remember the Prime Minister made an announcement like 2 days before Christmas. Christmas is cancelled and you can't see your family, kind of thing. It was the first time I ever spent Christmas on my own, and that was really tough, a really tough time because Christmas for me means time with the people that I care about, my family, and eating too much and watching too much television and playing games and being silly, but it's with the people you care about. Also, every so often you'll have a round, disagree about things, but you're with your family, right? Your family doing family things. And when you're busy, you don't get much of that during the year. So I know what that feels like from one experience I've had, and Ruth will be sharing her experience around the experience she had at that time later in the session. But 1 in 9, that's that's a pretty high number. There's quite a few people in the country, in the world, that will be spending this festive period alone, particularly in countries that celebrate Christmas. 26%, so that's 1 in 4 adults report feeling lonely often, always, or some of the time. Obviously, that sensation is further exaggerated at this time of year. And we've got things like Google searches for loneliness at Christmas spike every December. We know that there's a day, I think they call it Black Monday or Black Tuesday. I think it's the last Monday or Tuesday before Christmas where, sadly, suicide levels spike. That's something we've seen repeatedly over the last 15, 20 years. So I know it's easy to assume that this time of year is magical and everyone's happy and having a great time, and the Christmas carols are playing and the movies are on TV and the stocks are filled with gifts and treats and goodies. But what is the reality of Christmas? I'm not here to tell you. Let's discuss, let's explore this. What is your experience about the full range of experience we'd like to have at Christmas? And why is it easy for us to assume everybody's happy and having a great time? And also, why does loneliness increase during this time of year? So I'd love to get your take and perspective. Mark, you've raised a good point that 1 in 9 is not just people that are by themselves. You could be surrounded by people. You could be in a room full of people and feel totally disconnected and isolated. It's a very good point. But really inviting you guys in to get involved with the conversation. When you read these statistics and you think on your personal experiences, what comes to mind? What are your reflections? What would you like to share?
As I made the comment, I'm happy to start off. A couple of years ago, hit quite a low point, and was on holiday. Family was there as well, and it didn't make a difference. I was still very lonely and disengaged in my own head, and it took a good few conversations to actually put myself back into the room and engage. I was just at times sat there watching what was going on, totally disengaged, not included, feeling lonely. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there that do that, that can still be surrounded but still feel on their own.
Mark, firstly, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. I really honour and respect that. Is there anything about this time of year that can further exaggerate those feelings?
I think the excitement of everybody else. We have a lot of people coming together. If you are kind of the quiet one in the group, you look at people around parties and things that are stood there on their own. The party's going on around them, and they're just stood watching, no engagement at all. And I think because of this, it's happening all over the place.
Mark, you've raised a really powerful point. There's an expectation of how we should feel at this time of year, like it's on how people look on the front of the chocolate box or how they look in the Disney movie, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. And I think if you don't feel that way, then there's a pressure internally, but also an expectation from those around you. Why are you not happy? Why are you not having a good time? So I really appreciate that. And how can we meet people where they are rather than expecting them to be a particular way? Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that. Who else would like to share? Has anyone else got any thoughts or perspectives around the things that you see on screen and your own personal experiences? Or what you've witnessed in others around you? Chris, you've raised a really, really, really interesting point around not just missing loved ones, friends, family, pets, grief, bereavement, etc., all the worries you have in life. Would you be happy sharing more about that? Because I think there's some really powerful points for us to explore further. Would you be comfortable sharing a little bit more of your perspective on that, Chris?
Yeah, I just look at my father, for instance. He's 78, and he struggles a bit during Christmas time. And I'm sure he's missing his his parents, friends from back in the day, other family members, and it can drive home kind of it is a family time, and then some of your loved ones are not there, so
Yeah.
people tend to struggle.
Absolutely. My two family members that were probably the most zealous about Christmas, that loved it more than anyone else in my family, both sadly over the last few years have passed away. My dad and my dog. As soon as the decorations went up, my dog would get very excited. He used to love opening presents. And my dad was like literally just, he looked forward to Christmas. It was his most favorite time of year. And every year it gets a little bit harder because I am celebrating something without the people to whom it was the most meaningful. So I get that, and absolutely every year for me it further highlights the fact that there are two important people that aren't in physically in my life anymore, to the point where this year we're actually going away for Christmas to avoid it altogether. I know that's not a long-term answer, but I really appreciate that. But you've mentioned things like negative comparisons, debt worries. If there are things that are concerns for you, things that are causing you stress, and things that are creating anxiety, as Chris has said, it can further exaggerate at this time of year. It brings it to the fore. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else got any thoughts on that? Chris also mentioned the weather, particularly today, looking outside the window. It's grey, it's miserable, it's literally raining cats and dogs. And it's that in itself, is a contributing factor. I wish it looked like it did on the front of the chocolate box with snow falling and everything white and pristine. But, for the most of us, that's not what Christmas looks like. So has anyone else got any thoughts before we kind of move on to the next discussion point around your thoughts of this time of year? And I'm not sitting here trying to bring everyone on a downer. There is so much magic and beauty. I still believe in the magic of this festive season because the magic is us. We're able to create something, a time of year where people's spirits can be uplifted, where we can show up with more love and compassion for those around us. The season of cheer and goodwill, for sure, it does exist if we believe it does. But let's not discount the fact that some of us do struggle to move forward with this if we were able to have open and honest conversation. So love to get one more share before we move on to the next point.
Hi there. I think as well,
Caroline.
lots of people have maybe moved away from families. So you've got people that can't be with loved ones, and then if financially they can't afford it, I think people have moved away more from typical home. And even though you might have your own family, missing your I guess maybe your house that you grew up in, or your mum and dad, for example, that could play a part in it as well.
Caroline, you're absolutely right. There is a direct correlation between the increase of mental health issues and suicidality and the breakdown of community over the last 50, 60 years in Western society. There are still some cultures around the world, and for those of you who attended our previous sessions, I talk about this a lot, the blue zones, the areas in the world where people typically live longer than anywhere else in the world, where people are typically living to 90, 100 years of age and have better quality and vitality in their lives. And there are 5 pillars, which we're not going to go into all of them today, but the one that is something that for us is crucial is community. People that have a sense of community tend to have better life outcomes. They live longer, have better health. And often these people are living in areas where there aren't hospitals and Amazon Prime and supermarkets stocked with food, but they're doing better than many of us in Western society in big cities with everything out of fingertips. So, Caroline, you've hit on a really important point. As human beings, we need community. We need people around us, whether that be family or friends or just, that sense of neighborhood community or our workplaces. And when we don't have access to that, that has a serious effect on our mental, physical, emotional, and social health. So this is something that I think we can explore further. There is a huge cost to this, both commercially and culturally. Now, Judy put together this wonderful slide, but I was never good with slides and equations at school, and I did try and make sense of this, but it's probably easier just to hand it over to Judy, given it was your slide. Do you want to talk us through this, Judy?
Yeah, sure. So the purpose of the slide was to kind of show how connection isn't just a nice to have, but it actually directly impacts how we feel, think, and perform as well. So what we can see is that when we have a high connection, we can tend to feel more supported, safe, and engaged. And at that point, stress feels a lot more manageable, resilience is stronger, and trust is a lot higher in others. And when we have a low connection, stress is a lot higher. People can feel a bit isolated or unseen, and our resilience and trust in friends, colleagues, and teams declines. So what we can see here is connection doesn't just influence us emotionally, it actually influences how we function, and it shapes our ability to cope and adapt and thrive as well. So even a small drop in connection can actually end up having that ripple effect across our well-being, our performance, and relationships as well. And so like how we show up for others, how we check in, it can be a simple question as like, how are you doing? How are you really feeling? Or a small act of kindness can have a big like domino effect with others as well. And it matters more than we think. So it's not about being perfect, but it's about creating that consistency and taking that small step, one step at a time. And we've got a colleague, so Ruth is happy to share one of her stories about what it's really like to be seen.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you so much for those shares. I'm really resonating. One of my stories was, again, like Neil touched upon, the time when we were restricted about when we could go home. So I'm from Northern Ireland. I live in London. And I remember being at a friend's just on Christmas Eve and just, flitting between watching the news and music and dancing and just trying to keep our spirits alive to see whether we could actually go home or not. And it just, I think, I was very angry at the time when I realised I couldn't go home, that I couldn't be with family, that I paid for flights and presents, and that, what was I going to do? And thankfully, I had a little bubble that I was able to connect with on Christmas Day. And thank you to technology, still being able to keep in contact with people. But it really, after the anger subsided, I reflected on the sense of control and ideology that maybe big corporate companies like to influence upon us, and how the ideal Christmas should look like and how it should feel like. And ever since that moment, what I decided to do was tune into how I wanted winter to be for me and what rituals were actually important to me, to my heart, and to the people I cared about. And I started connecting to nature. And, that day when I wasn't able to go home, I had a whole morning just to myself. And initially it felt very strange. And now actually what I've gained is a lot of value in stillness, in looking outside to the seasons and winter and knowing this is a time for slowing down and to be present and to checking in with ourselves and not getting caught up in this mad rush of having to see everyone and spend all our money and overeat and overindulge. Is actually a season for letting things go. And so, yeah, over the past 4 years, ever since then, I've been tuning in what's important to me at Christmas. How can I communicate that actually to people I care about? I'm not available all the time. I have some healthy boundaries. And people have shown up really well for that I guess, these new rituals I'm creating, they actually appreciate that I can't be there for them all the time, and that gives them space. So yeah, I think a negative situation has definitely given me reflection for turning it into a positive, and to really find my tribe, to find my ways, and to know that people actually appreciate that too. Yeah, so thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Ruth. I just want to pick up on David, your point there as well. It's interesting. We run projects around the world on our corporate side, and we've got a lot of clients in America. And you could replace Christmas with Thanksgiving. We've got clients in the Middle East. We've got a lot of projects running out of Dubai and various other kind of countries in the Middle East. And you could replace that with Eid. It's not so much the celebration. It's the fact that not everybody is going to resonate and connect with it in the same way, because we've got a lot of expat workers that we are working with in the Middle East that aren't Muslim. So when there's Eid, they kind of feel that sense of disconnection. Or even like, some of our clients, American companies, it's Thanksgiving, all their colleagues in America are shut down, but you aren't. So it's like, I feel left out. Does that make sense? And really, I know we've done a lot of work around inclusivity, and it's not so much the celebration, it's the fact that, and that's why we called it around the festive season, because for many countries around the world, like, this time of year marks something. Whether you have a religious or a cultural connection with the holidays is irrelevant. You can't avoid it, if that makes sense. If you live in England, like, Christmas happens whether you choose to participate or not. And you will feel the emotional effects of that, again, whether you choose to participate or not. And I think that's really what we're here to discuss, because I totally agree with you. Whether you choose culturally or you just don't want to participate, as Ruth mentioned, a lot of people do feel the commercial push around this time of year. When August bank holiday, it's 32 degrees outside and the Christmas stuff's in the shops. Like, some people are just feeling that icky, like, I don't want to participate in this. But as I said, whether you have whatever your reasons are behind it, it happens, and you will still feel the emotional effects. Does that make sense, David?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the people that I mentioned, I'm thinking mainly of colleagues actually, and we don't go all out in our office for Christmas, but there's still little bits of tinsel around, still Christmas parties and that, and we really have to make sure that people do feel not left out by not taking part, and that they have an opt out as well. So, yeah, it's just one thing that growing up I never really considered, but as you meet more people, you definitely have to.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, because I don't come from a religious or a Christian household for that matter. But when I was a kid, I didn't know that Christmas was a religious thing, because it was just about trees and presents. You're growing up in the UK, your parents want you to feel like you fit in. So we'd have the decorations, we'd have the gifts. Santa would still come to our house. It wasn't like we were excluded because we didn't happen to be Christian. But I think that this is where we can move beyond that, where it's like there is an opportunity to create positive engagement regardless of your beliefs around the celebration itself. And again, whether that be Christmas or Eid or Diwali or Thanksgiving. And I think these are where we've got natural opportunities for humans to be able to show up in a slightly different way than we do year round. And I think that's where we're coming from, is like, what can we do to be able to, exactly from what you've said, that if there are people that have a different feeling or a different connection to whatever holiday we're celebrating, how can we check in with people? How can we show up for them? And I think that's the question that we got there on the screen. Has anyone got any examples of how you may have reached out to people to check in, to show up for them, and how that might have changed how they feel? Because I know when I've had experiences, particularly the ones I've described after losing my dad and more recently my dog, particularly this time of year, people knew the impact that was going to have, how they showed up for me. It's like, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I be there for you? That really made a difference, because it gave me a space to express myself rather than having to feel the pressure of showing up in a particular way. There was someone there just to offer me a shoulder and an ear and just to listen. And I really felt that was very powerful for me, knowing there are people that are willing to listen. I've got an experience as how others may have showed up for you, or you've showed up for others, to check in on them, to inquire about their welfare and well-being in a meaningful way, and how that may have had a positive impact.
I think it's very much one that's taken in from a military perspective, is that although very bounded, come Christmas, the very focus was on those that didn't have family, wherever they were stationed, would be the first ones allowed home. Anybody left behind was always looked after by everybody else, were invited around Christmas Day, made sure they were looked after. And I've received that and given it from both sides, where I've taken soldiers in that are on their own, and also been invited to other people when I've been on my own. The other one from there, you talk about different religions. Very often where you have a kind of a substantial group, they will bring their kind of celebration within so that everybody can experience it with them, which is a huge education, so that you can actually understand more about them and their religion than them just going off and doing it on their own, which I thought was absolutely fantastic experience.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating. I'm not a religious person, but I spent some time reading about various religions, and at the heart of all of them is love, right? Like, it shouldn't mean like a particular time of year or one of the big days for us to be able to show up to express the core of what's the heart of, you know, moral goodness or any religion. And I think this is really where there's an opportunity, there's a call, there's an invitation at this time of year just to open-heartedly, meaningfully inquire about the welfare and well-being of those around you, whether they choose to honor or participate in whatever cultural celebration that we are marking at that time. But how are you actually doing? Because often that how are you question is the most BS question that we ask, because most of us aren't really interested in giving an honest answer, and most of us, when we're asking, we don't want a true and honest answer. Go for it, Mark. You're about to ask something, and then
I'd say that we seem to be getting more inclusive. Where before we had a Christmas party, we now have a festive party, and I think it's becoming more. I don't know if it's like we struggle to celebrate St. George's Day. We can celebrate everybody else, but St. George's Day is hard. Is it harder now celebrating Christmas? And it's been known more as a festival rather than Christmas, although we seem to be quite happy everybody else can celebrate theirs. We just don't seem to be able to pick up and celebrate what we do fully, but we are more open to allow others to come in.
And again, obviously, there's a much deeper conversation here, but I think we should give everybody the right to express and celebrate whatever is meaningful to them. That it shouldn't be filtered or dumbed down or diluted to for the purpose of fitting in. And I think this is really where expression is important, and inclusivity is that, yes, we mark every holiday and also make it as inclusive as possible for those that may feel left out, whether for cultural reasons or whether for mental emotional reasons. As we expressed, there's going to be a whole variety of reasons why people might struggle to engage, and I think that's a really important point. Go for it, Siobhan.
I just wanted to give a couple of examples of inclusivity, and I've talked to several people. I do practice my faith, and I'm involved in a couple of groups that I help run in the church, Alpha being one of them. And people in there have talked about last year coming along to Alpha because last year somebody had invited them to come to a Christmas Mass, which is not something they would normally do, and the carol services, and how that has led to them wanting to become more involved in things and wanting to feel part of something and getting that connection to a point where they now have friendships and things like that. And that came from just an invitation to come along to a carol service or to come to Mass at Christmas, which I think people feel more open to doing at this time of year than normally. And the other thing I wanted to share about my most memorable Christmas ever was when I was working full time in a homeless shelter in Ireland, in Cork, and I was working over Christmas, and we just had the most wonderful time in the night shelter with all the homeless men and women, just having a day and having the tree and having Mass said, actually, and they were allowed to have a drink, and we had gone right and got gifts from all the donations from all the local shops for gifts for people, so everybody had something. And those that normally spent a lot of time living on the streets or in emergency night shelter had that sense of togetherness and inclusion and involvement. And that's something that will always stay with me, and as I said, the most memorable Christmas I've had.
Thank you, Siobhan. I think there's some gold nuggets there from what you shared. Everybody wants to feel a part of something, to be able to feel that sense of togetherness, to feel a sense of inclusivity. And whether that be with your family, with your community, with your, you know, your church, with your football team, with your mates, whatever it is, as human beings, we need that. We need social connection, however that comes about. And how can we create moments and opportunities for connection and inclusivity in whatever your sphere of influence is, whether that be in your workplace, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community, however that might be. And I think this is really where let's look at, well, what can we do? How can we, all 22 of you that have chosen to be on this session, and however many of you that are watching this as a recording, be a part of the change? We are, and you're the first to hear it. We've got our theme for Stress Awareness Month 2026 ready to go now. It'll be launched officially in January, but we're revealing it here first. And the theme is Be the Change. And it was, as Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. If there are things in the world that you want to see done better, done differently, if you want to address some of the concerns and issues that we have in modern society, rather than waiting for someone else to fix it, how are you going to show up as the change? How are you going to be an example of that change? How are you going to embody that change? And this is really where there's an opportunity for us to consider, well, what can we do? How can we show up differently? So who is that person that you could check in on this season? How can you show up for yourself as well? We can show up more effectively for those around us if we show up for ourselves. There was some research that was published a couple of months ago, which shocked and both shocked and fascinated me. That in Western society, the average human checks their phone 96 times a day. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Some of you may double, triple that. Don't be proud of that fact. So you know, like we are, you know, let's just admit it. We are all addicted to our technology. You know, it's not that we go very long without. Oh, I need to check my phone. Then you check, you know, your WhatsApp messages, and then somehow you end up on your emails, and then before you know it, you're on Instagram, and then on YouTube, and then you check your bank account, and then before you know it, you've gone back around and around in circles. You've lost 2 hours of your life just spinning around between the apps on your phone. We've all been there. It's happened, right? So it's 96 times a day on average we're checking our phones. We know a lot about what's going on in all of the different access points that we are utilizing when we pick up our phones. How many times do you check in on your heart? Is it half of that? 50 times a day? Quarter of that? 25 times a day? A tenth of that? Up to 10 times a day? I'm going to hazard a guess. Most people don't check in on their hearts at least once a day. So you know more about what's going on in the world at large than you do about what's going on inside of yourself. How many times are we meaningfully checking in on the people we care about, whether that be our family, our partners, our children, our colleagues, people in our community? So once again, you've probably got more awareness of what's happening through this device than you really genuinely do about people's mental and emotional states of those around you. How can we change that? I'm not saying that, you know, you spend an hour in this session and you're going to only check your phone once a day and check on people 50 times a day. That's not going to happen. But how can you start to redress that balance? So we're showing up in the real world rather than the virtual app social media world. And part of that is, you know, even making a commitment to check in with yourself once a day. Have a once a day check in with your heart. How am I feeling today? Because you can only show up for others to the depths that you can show up for yourself. And that's basically the kind of the two starting points. Go for it, Ruth.
I was just going to say that recently I've been really aware of how many people, when they're walking in the street, I do live in London, but they're all looking down and we're all bumping into each other because we don't even have eyes up. So people aren't even making eye contact. And there was just something the other day when, you know, it's so cold and the homelessness feels more prevalent the minute when you know it's cold outside. And there was someone outside Sainsbury's and I had no money on me, but I went back to my car where I had the pound for the trolley and I gave it to him. And it's just like, people don't notice, or maybe they choose not to notice the homeless people, but this time is a time more than ever where we could just take that pound with us. Or I said to my partner, how about we cook a bit of extra dinner one night and we go down and we just offer it if anyone wants it, like in a takeaway container. You know, it's the simple things, I think, that don't take much time, where we can come back to this state of humanness and connection. Yeah, whether it's eye gaze or just looking at someone, acknowledging them, I think small, simple acts are the most profound.
And as I said, it does start with checking in with ourselves. How am I really doing? What do I need? Because when you get more comfortable asking those questions of yourself, it's easier to ask them for those around you. So let's kind of spend a few minutes on that. What can you do? Because this isn't just about, you know, talking about the problem. This is about how do we make things better. So I guess this comes back to, what are you comfortable and willing to do to make a difference to yourself and those around you? What could you do? What actions could you take? What can you commit to here and now? Seems a lot of very deep thinking faces going on. What could I do? They all got any ideas? Let's kind of share some ideas so we can kind of consider.
I think just simply reminding yourself to, as you said, Neil, it's as easy as just saying, how am I, or how am I really today? And we learn it in mental health champions that just asking that, just adding that word really, it has such a big impact, because then it actually triggers not just yourself, but someone else to think, okay, but how am I actually doing, as opposed to the default answer, which is, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Or not bad, can't complain. It's very easy to go to that default response, whereas without actually taking the time to stop and reflect as, how am I actually doing? But also being willing to do the same with others. You will get the standard default response when you ask most people. You ask them, how are you? And you get that kind of, yeah, I'm all right, I'm not bad. But then just the follow-up question, how are you really? And you know what will happen? And let's test this out. So, who have we got? Chris, would you mind volunteering for this? Just simple exercise, not painful, I promise. I'm going to ask
sure.
you. I'm going to ask you a question. I'd like you to give me your normal standard response. How you would usually ask this question if you just bumped into someone in the corridor in the street and they said, "Chris, how are you?" How would you typically respond to that?
Fantastic. I'm gutted it's not a Monday morning and I haven't got 5 days of work ahead of me.
Okay. So what you've now just witnessed is a completely pointless exchange of information. So Chris says what he's normally said, and I know that that wasn't a reflective response. You'll see that when I ask the follow-up question. So I'd like you all to observe very carefully. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see Chris a little bit bigger. I'd like you to listen with your eyes, your ears, and your heart. That doesn't mean anything to you now. I'll explain that in a moment. Chris, we've done the pointless exchange. I asked you how you are, and you said, "Oh, I'm," you know, whatever it is that you said. But I really want to know, how are you really?
Yeah, I'm good. I am good at the moment. I'm feeling particularly buoyant. I've not drunk alcohol. Not that I've got an alcohol dependency, but I've not drunk alcohol since the beginning of November. So I'm just feeling quite good, quite resilient. Looking forward to Christmas. Yeah, so overall, I'm chipper.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you playing with me on that. Now, here's the thing: the content is irrelevant. The context is everything. How many of you believed him the second time round? Okay, many of you. For what reason? What's the reason you believed his second response? There were many clues, many
Stopped
clues.
and thought about it.
Thank you, Siobhan. He stopped and he thought about it. Also, how many of you noticed he was looking for the answer to the question? The first time he didn't. He just autopilot regurgitated his default autopilot response. How do you know he was looking for the answer? Siobhan's just demonstrated as she looked for the answer to my question.
His eyes went up.
Thank
Clearly
you,
to the
Mark.
right, trying to search, remember.
Absolutely. How many of you noticed that? Chris was like, yeah, how am I doing? Where's the answer? What's the answer? How am I doing? And when I asked the follow-up question, what was Chris doing? Siobhan was like, what is the answer to Neil's question? What was he doing? The eyes always give it away. Now, here's the thing. If you're really present with someone, I mean really present, You pick up so much about what they're communicating without their words. Where we live in a world, as Ruth described earlier, most of us are walking around looking at a screen, and even when you're talking to someone, your mind is somewhere else. One of the framings of this session is not about the content, it's about us being here together having a conversation, which is really hard to be present when there's so much pulling you away. The best gift you can give someone this Christmas is your time and your presence. There is no coincidence that this moment is called the present because it is the most important gift you can give someone. I know that sounds cheesy as hell. I am sorry. It's lunchtime. Nothing wrong with a bit of cheese. But the point I'm making here is you would not have picked that up if I didn't bring awareness to it. Does that make sense? If you weren't present to Chris, when he is giving you an authentic response, you wouldn't have known the difference. But just by being present, it's like, well, he stopped. He paused for a second. He thought about it. He looked up, which indicates he was looking for the answer. And even though he told us he was good, that he's feeling pretty chipper, it's not the content. It's the fact that he stopped and thought about it shows us that he was giving us a more authentic response to the question. Does that make sense? If you do nothing else, create moments where you can actually check in on someone and be present to them when they're answering. And if someone is giving you a default response, you can follow up. You've already got a question. How are you really, though? Which is basically saying to Chris, the first time he answered the question, all right, we've done the nonsense. We've done the social nicety tick box thing. Let's have a real conversation. There was a campaign we were involved with a few years ago with an organization. I believe they're not around anymore. They're called Time to Talk. And the campaign was called #AskTwice. You ask the same question twice, you get a different response. So if there is nothing else that you do this year, when you're bumping into people, when you're having a conversation with people, just ask twice. And observe, listen with your ears, which is the words, your eyes. You would have missed a lot of what Chris was communicating if you weren't paying attention. If he didn't have his camera on, which is one of the reasons we ask people to have their cameras on, you would have missed the body language, the non-verbal communication. But also listening with your heart. What does that mean? I know that sounds a bit woolly and hippie, but there is actual reasons behind this. What do you think I mean by listening with your heart? If you don't know, have a guess.
Like authentically caring.
Yeah, so if ears is like, you know, what I'm hearing, eyes is what I'm seeing, heart is what I'm feeling. Do you agree if Chris is saying, yeah, I'm chipper, I'm feeling pretty good, but his voice is shaking and there's something about his energy that suggests he's stressed or anxious, do you agree your heart would pick it up? How many would agree with that statement? Some of you. How many have walked into a room where an argument's taken place? What happens? Can you feel the energy, the intensity of the argument, even if there's no argument happening right now? You walk into a room where kids have been up to mischief and having fun. You walk in the room, everybody freezes, and you're like, what are you guys laughing at? You can tell, right? Your heart can feel the energy. Does that make sense? That's not woo-woo, by the way, that we are bioenergetic creatures. You pick up the bioenergy of those around you and creatures as well, which is how your dogs can tell when you're stressed because they can pick up the energy. Does that make sense? What I'm suggesting here is trust your heart. You will know. And this is what I mean about showing up authentically. Doing those three things, listening very intently to the words, to the body language, and to the feelings, will give you a good sense of where someone is. So that's what a simple thing you can do if you do nothing else. Anyone else that got any sort of suggestions of things that they can do or actions they this week to show up for those around them, to be a part of the process of change, to make a positive difference in the world? I'd love to hear from you what your intentions are to show up, to make the world a slightly better place. And Ruth put in a really powerful comment there. The heart's magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger than the brain. So yeah, that's absolutely true. We ran a session recently on unconditional positive regard. You can find the handbook on our resources page on our website. If you're interested in that, I'd encourage you to read the science behind, you know, showing up from heart connection. So yeah, what else can we do to show up for those around us, to make a positive difference, to reach people that might be feeling lonely, disconnected, or isolated? As Mark shared earlier, maybe the person in the party that's quiet in the corner. What can you do? Yeah, Mark, great. So if there is a person by themselves, make an effort to go and connect to them.
I think don't just focus on the people that are joining in, but like you said, listen with your eyes, ears, and heart for the people that might be a bit quiet. And whether it's for religious reasons or cultural reasons, they will still feel excluded. So look out for that as well.
Thank you.
I was also going to add to that and say, like, sometimes it could be people who are like just a change in their energy. So maybe like making themselves look great, like really, really good. So extra effort in like makeup, or acting overly confident or overly energetic. That could be a way of them hiding something and covering up something beneath.
Absolutely. Judy, you've raised a really important point. It's not just people go quiet and shut down. People could overcompensate. They're extra happy, extra extroverted, and maybe they're hiding and masking how they're truly feeling, trying to show up in the world in a way that they expect people to see them, but actually hiding how they're truly feeling. So I guess the point, Judy, you've raised there is a crucial one, which is any changes in people's normal behaviors. As much as it could be completely fine and innocent, so it's just worth checking in on people if you see significant or exaggerated changes in their normal behaviors. Thank you, Judy. Perfect. What else? Anyone else got any ideas, thoughts, or suggestions on around how we can make a positive difference to show up better, particularly at this time of year?
I think being vulnerable yourself can often lead the way for other people to feel safe to open up if they're perhaps alone or struggling to go home to their family, which can present a lot of challenges. Maybe dropping in a comment, if it feels appropriate, saying, "Oh, I'm going home this year. I notice it's bringing up a lot for me. How's it feeling for you? What are you up to this Christmas or this festive season?"
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Wonderful. Anyone else got any thoughts on what else we can do? How can we better show up? And Ruth, your point there was a great one. Mark, at the beginning of the session, you being vulnerable and authentic definitely made it easier for others to do the same. So how can we lead by example? How can we be the change? Definitely. Perfect. Get one more share before we start to wrap up the session. Who else has got anything that has been inspired by today's discussion, or any thoughts or ideas that you've had that could be valuable? Go for it, Claire.
I'm just wondering, can you allow people to opt out as a means of recognizing that they're not in a space to allow them to enjoy a social event?
Great question. And part of me wants to really respond to that. What does everybody else think about that? It's a really good point. I think, should we force people to put on their Santa hat and their Christmas jumper and celebrate, or, whatever else is going on at any particular time of year? What about opting out? What's everyone else's thoughts around that?
Perhaps maybe it's okay, but to ask what the reason behind why they want to opt out is more important to focus on.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah. Thanks, Leah.
Absolutely.
Anyone else got any thoughts on this?
I have one of the team that are looking at, once again, not being included and almost ostracizing themselves. And the immediate reaction is to bring them in even closer. And the question there is just, I don't know, it's shaken everything that I thought of, that we need to bring them in. Maybe they don't want to come in. Maybe I need to dig a bit deeper to understand more about the reasons behind it. And maybe they're right and I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mark. Caroline.
I was going to say, we have this with two of our team members who are triggered by different things at Christmas. And because we've worked to create a really trusting environment, they've openly told me why they don't want to participate. And then I respect that reason. So I don't force them, because if the shoe was on the other foot, I wouldn't want somebody to force me. So close the office for our lunch. I don't say to them, well, because you're not coming, you have to take that time as holiday. We treat them the same, but we just don't enforce that they have to come to our Christmas lunch, because actually, why would I want to come and make somebody feel uncomfortable? We support them in a different way.
Thank you, Caroline. Siobhan.
I was just thinking about absolutely respecting people wanting to opt out and give them space, but saying, well, what about we do it a different time? What about after the holidays? What about we do something else together, and having an opportunity, not that it's closed off then and saying, well, you don't want to join in, fair enough, but saying, okay, not this time, but keep it open for later on.
Thank you, Siobhan. Claire, may I offer you 2 questions that could be very powerful in those kind of dialogues?
Yeah.
First question is asking the person not whether they're coming or not, or participating in whatever celebration you're planning, what support do you need? And the second question, because the support could cover a broad range of things. It could be practical support, it could be emotional support, it may be that you can refer them to the EAP or OC Health or whatever other resources you have available. But the second question, which is more personal, which is how can I best show up for you? So if that was me and you having that dialogue, Claire, and you were like, all right, Neil, we've got the Christmas celebration on Friday night and we're going to play crazy golf and we're going for dinner afterwards, which is what we're doing. I think that's what's been decided, team, I believe. And you're Claire, like you're saying to me, no, I don't want to come. I'm not feeling it. Rather than focusing on the event or the activity, it's I want to focus on you. Claire, what support do you need? And I'm creating the space for you to express yourself. And beyond that, how can I, Neil, show up for you, Claire?
I think that's absolutely critical, because I think people can feel pressured into participating, and actually it's destructive because of the headspace maybe that they're in. But they do certainly need to have some sort of follow-up where it's not just
Absolutely.
all right, okay, well, that's how you feel. It needs to be but let us have a conversation another day, or let us look at this a little bit deeper.
It's more than that, Claire, because we're actually parking the conversation around the activity to focus on you. Does that make sense? And that person, for whatever reason, doesn't feel they can participate. So let's not try and force them into that, but show up for them as a human being. And this, I think, is one of the key sort of takeaways from this conversation. Rather than focusing on Christmas, the celebration, getting them engaged, not engaged, whatever, is how can we show up for people, meet them where they are? And that's, for me, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, beyond the how are you really, is what support do you need and how can I show up for you? If you can ask some of those 3 questions, you could make a huge difference to their life. And one of the programs, our landmark program, Mental Health Champions, that's basically one of the key things we get our champions to lead with, and how much of a difference that can make in people's lives, just asking those 3 questions and being fully present to them when asking those questions. Thank you. And it's a really good point that you've raised there. So loneliness isn't just about being alone, as we've established. Mark said very eloquently that you can be surrounded by people and feel completely disconnected and isolated. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, and unsupported, even in busy spaces where there are lots of people around you. So let's move from awareness to action. It's all well and good us having this conversation, but what small steps can you take towards more connection? What is that one action you can take in the next day to support yourself or someone else? What ways can you allow yourself to be more real and authentic? As many of you've done so on this call, how can we show up in this way and connect with the positive experiences of this time of year, so you can show up more grounded and strong for those around you? So we do have a little resource book that Judy has put together. It's absolutely fantastic. I read it yesterday. She's going to drop a link into the chat where you can access that and all our other purple papers. Purple papers are our tongue-in-cheek equivalent of a white paper. It's just a little guide that kind of gives you more information than we're able to discuss on the call itself. So on that page, you'll find the resource material accompanying today's session, but as well as all the others that we've created over the last year. We mentioned our Mental Health Champions program. If you're more interested in learning and developing the skills to be able to show up more effectively for those around you in your workplace or beyond, because you've attended our session today. Thank you, Judy. I've just remembered I'm not sharing my screen. Oh, thanks for the prompt. Mental Health Champions program. There is a 50% discount that anyone that is interested in attending in return for participating today. It starts in February 2026, and it's half price. So it's only £248 if you sign up using the code that will come in your email tomorrow. The next webinar is at the end of January, and it's going to be focusing on the stress awareness theme 2026 as how will you be the change? How can we individually and collectively show up to make a difference in the world around us? We've just also launched our global stress and mental health survey. Some of our partners have generously given away lots of gifts that you can win just in return for giving us your thoughts and feedback. We're really trying to get a sense of where people are in the world with stress and mental health at the moment. We're really pushing to get as many people to complete that as possible. We've only had about 100 people sign up so far. So if you can help to get more people to sign up, the data that we have will allow us to produce the reports, which hopefully will influence how people are taking action against stress and mental health issues in the year to come. But also you can win one of many prizes just in return for giving us your feedback. It takes about 7 minutes to complete. So please, if you can, complete it and also share that with people so they can also help to allow us to get a true sense of what's going on. Lots of resources dropping into your inbox tomorrow. If you are dealing with issues in your workplace and you're interested in our workplace forum, there will be a link to how to join that coming into your inbox very, very soon as well. And if you don't get our weekly newsletter, that's where you're going to keep up to date with all the things that we are doing and sharing. You can sign up for that. The link will come into the chat very shortly. I was going to say you'll get it in your inbox, but you'll only get it in your inbox if you signed up for the newsletter. So you've got to be in it to win it. So yeah, please feel free to sign up for that. If you liked today's session, give us a review on Google. That means more people will find us. So yeah. And if you need any additional support, there are some resources there on screen, particularly if you're struggling or know someone else that is. We will again share that all by email in the next day or so. Any final questions, comments, feedback? This is an opportunity before we close the meeting. If there's anything you'd like to share, discuss, explore, or ask, feel free to do so. So who has a question, comment, or something they'd like to share before we close the session? Okay, so what we will do, I will hang out for the next 5 or 6 minutes if anyone does want to stay on and chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to attend today's session. I'm really hoping that you can take some of the actions from today's session and be able to create moments of connection to those around you. And hopefully, between us collectively, little by little, one conversation at a time, we can make a positive difference to those around us and leave the world a little bit better than we found it. Wishing you all a really wonderful, happy, Merry Christmas and festive season, however you choose to celebrate it. And look forward to seeing you all at next year's webinar at the end of January. Have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. And as I said, I will hang out if anyone wants to chat.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.